So yeah, the colour mixing recap, and I will relate it vaguely to the night scenes project that we've got this month. I've still got the exhibition on if anybody's interested. So
Very good.
yeah, Mary came up, and Mary and Joan came earlier in the week. So that if anybody wants to come have a look at that, that's on until next Wednesday. Daily sort of 11 o'clock till 6 o'clock, and then we close a bit earlier on Wednesday. So if anybody wants to have a look at that, that's then Kings Road in Chelsea. Yeah, colour mixing. So I've got these are little bits of information that I once wrote out, and I found these in here. So these are like my kind of recommended starting point for colours, which most of you know anyway. And then a few other colours that are quite useful as time goes on. So I sort of think of those as like the priorities, and then the ones that can be the next lot. This is lots of little bits of information just about paint in general, different things like the different ranges you get, like artist and student range and stuff like that. So if anybody wants one of those, I'll leave those over here or something like that. The colour mixing, sorry, I've got all my bits. I've got a colour wheel. So that is the colour wheel that I use. And when I first started painting, so when I was at school, we were told that you could mix all the colours you need from three primary colours, like a yellow, a red and a blue. And really you need a bit more than that. When I went to art school, they used to refer to colours as being warm or cool colours. I'm looking for the book right now. I've got a book somewhere about colour theory. It'll come back in a minute. So the idea being that maybe like this red will be a bit cool and that bit warmer. But I think it can be a bit of a confusing way to, it's not the most straightforward idea. So there's a book called Blue and Yellow Don't Make Green, which I've got floating around here somewhere. And that's where I got this from. And the idea is that if you've got primary colours, you've got them, they've all got a slight bias to one of the secondary colours. So you'll have orangey reds, you'll have sort of more purpley reds, and so on and so forth. So that's the basic idea. And then with those, you can mix a whole range of different brighter or duller greens. So yeah, that's the basic idea. To mix really dark colours, which is what I've been trying to do here. You could use a black, so an out of the tube black. I occasionally use blacks, but nowadays I tend to mix other colours in with them, just because I think it makes it a bit more interesting. Or you can mix, if you mix your very darkest colours, like a very dark red, like magenta, or this one's alizarin crimson, and then something like Prussian blue, that will give you a very, very dark colour, which is pretty much, it's almost as dark as a black you could get out of the tube. So that's pretty much how I've always mixed my, and sometimes I put like a dark brown in it as well, just so it's not quite so purpley, or even a green. Green's quite good too. So any of the dark colours. One of the things that somebody was saying this morning was that they found that they're quite transparent, and really the nature of the darker colours are that they're more transparent. They don't have that sort of covering. So if you've got a very bright background, or if you're working on white, quite often you need a couple of coats just to sort of get it really solid. So that's just something to kind of bear in mind. Whereas some of the lighter colours, particularly obviously white, proper cadmium colours are a lot more opaque. That's something to think about. So that's a little bit on colour theory. And I was just going to do something with, I was thinking like in some of these pictures of night scenes, and quite like this little picture of, this is Wexford a few years ago in Ireland. You got these sort of bright lights. So that was my demo of a bright light painting. So I'll repeat something similar to that. So if you've got a kind of bright light source, like one of these lights, I tend to paint the area around the light first. So this is cleaning up. This is yeah, so I would use so close you've seen it might be a little bit more yellowy, and this isn't a particularly strong yellow, I'm afraid. And then working a bit further out, you can add a little bit of the red. Don't forget the pressure brush. Right, start again. Just a little bit. Red being much stronger, so I'll kind of gradually work that in, and just kind of blend that in. And you could cover the whole lot with yellow if you wanted, or just leave a gap. And then perhaps further out still, I didn't really do that with this one, but I'd go slightly darker red. And then the darkest colours, something like the black or just mixed, or you could use a out the tube black. Did a little bit of ordinary black into that. Again, just working from the outside and just kind of softening that in with a brush. And then for the brightest bit, the highlight, I quite like to have a white, but just a tiny bit of yellow is quite nice, just to warm it up a little bit. Otherwise it can look quite stark. And this is where sometimes having a thicker mark can just look a bit better. So the darker colours tend to look better if they're put on a bit thinner, and then the more opaque, lighter marks, put those on a bit thicker. It just tends to stand out a bit better and look a bit better.
The lightest colour's thicker?
Yeah, the lightest colour's thicker.
Because you want it to be closer to you, or like?
Yeah, they just kind of, well, to me visually I think it looks better.
Yeah.
And other people have thought that, and I tend to agree with it. It's not my unique idea. It's just something I've heard, and I quite agree. I like the look of that. Whereas if you put thick, dark colours on thick, to be honest, I don't like that so much. And it's more of a personal thing. Some people like to paint, quite thickly anyway. I think for my own work, I like a little bit of a mixture really. Some very thinner areas and some areas a little bit thicker.
I think it makes it glow a bit more, maybe. I don't know. Do you think?
Yeah. And I think because you've got, yes. And the danger is it can look a little bit dead if you just have it too solid. So, and the other thing I was going to mention was like having a background tone. So I've deliberately bought an old board that's slightly darker. It doesn't necessarily have to be this colour, that was just what I had. But having the background tone, if you put that in even fairly thinly, that's quite, that does glow a bit more because it's got the darker tone underneath. Whereas if that was white, that might be a bit too, I might have to just put more colour over it just to cover it. And to make it look dark, but as it is, because there's a slightly darker tone under there, I can make use of that as a layer. So it's something to think about if you're interested in doing some sort of night thing. Okay.